The day was overcast, the kind of gloomy weather that seemed fitting for a funeral. As I stood there, surrounded by mourners, I couldn't help but reflect on the life of Charles, my father-in-law. He had been a kind man, a pillar in the community, and his absence left a void that was palpable in the air. I glanced over at Michael, my husband, standing rigid as the chief mourner. His face, usually unreadable, today seemed like an emotionless mask. I wondered, not for the first time, what thoughts were hiding behind that facade. The funeral procession was a grand affair, much like Charles himself. He was a man who had touched many lives, and it showed in the number of people who had come to pay their respects. As I listened to the eulogies, a mix of sorrow and admiration filled the air. Charles had been not just a family man, but a mentor, a friend to many. After the ceremony, as the crowd began to disperse, Michael leaned in and said, almost too casually, "I hope to be sent off like this too, surrounded by family and many acquaintances. Laura, I'll pick out some BGM, so count on you to handle it." His words struck me as odd, given the solemnity of the moment. It was typical of Michael to think about himself even in the face of his father's death. I felt a surge of anger, but managed to keep my voice steady. "Who are you to say that? Ask your real family for that. After all, we're just a family for show, right?" "I don't owe you that much," I retorted, my voice laced with bitterness. Michael's face, usually so composed, faltered for a moment. "What are you talking about, Laura?" "Oh, nothing," I replied, a cold smile playing on my lips. "Just a bit of a reality check. I know all about your secrets, Michael." His eyes widened slightly, and I could see a hint of panic flickering in them. It was a rare moment of vulnerability, one that I savored. "Everything Dad left behind will be inherited by me, his son," Michael said, his voice betraying a hint of desperation. I couldn't help but laugh, a short, humorless sound. "Is that what you think?" "You're about to face a much greater hell, Michael." The truth about Michael's secret life was about to unravel, and with it, the facade of our marriage. I knew that the coming days would be tumultuous, but I was ready to see Michael get what he deserved. As we left the cemetery, I took one last look at Charles's grave. He had been the only person in Michael's family who had shown me genuine kindness. And for his sake, if nothing else, I was determined to see this through to the end. The past few years with Michael flashed before my eyes as I sat in our quiet, almost desolate living room. I remembered the hesitant joy I felt when we decided to marry. I was 25 then, young and perhaps a bit naive. Moving in with his parents, Charles and Evelyn, seemed like a daunting step, but their warmth made it easier. I had quit my job at 28, hoping to start a family and support Charles, whose health was declining. Life had a semblance of normalcy then, with the occasional laughter and the routine challenges of a young wife. But the signs were there, subtle at first, like the ripples before a storm. Michael's late nights at work, the weekend trips he claimed were for business, and the ever-growing distance between us. One night, as Michael slept, his phone buzzed incessantly. Driven by a suspicion I couldn't shake off, I checked it. The texts were from a woman named Sophia, filled with intimate words and plans for their next rendezvous. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of anger, betrayal, and sorrow flooding through me. The next morning, over breakfast, I decided to confront him. "Michael, who's Sophia?" I asked, my voice deceptively calm. He choked on his coffee, coughing. "What? Who's Sophia?" "Don't play dumb. I saw the messages. Who is she?" I pressed, my voice rising. Michael's face hardened. "It's nothing. Just work stuff. You're being paranoid." I slammed my hand on the table, causing our son Alex to look up from his cereal. "Don't lie to me, Michael. I read the messages. They were anything but work stuff." He glared at me, his eyes cold. "You had no right to go through my phone. That's a violation of my privacy." "Privacy? Is that what you call cheating on your wife?" I spat back, feeling a bitter taste in my mouth. Michael stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I don't have to explain myself to you. You're just a housewife. What would you know?" I felt a sting at his words, but I held my ground. "A housewife who's been keeping your home, raising your son while you gallivant around with some mistress. I deserve better than this, Michael." He snorted. "You deserve better? You're lucky to have me. Without me, you're nothing." His words cut deep, but they also ignited a fire within me. I knew then that our marriage was beyond salvaging. It was time for Michael to face the consequences of his actions. The tension in the house was palpable after the breakfast confrontation. Michael had left in a huff, and I was left to ponder my next move. It was clear that our marriage was a sham, a facade that I could no longer maintain. The evidence of Michael's affair was not just a betrayal, it was the catalyst for a much-needed change. I decided to take action, starting with a call to Evelyn, who had always been more of a mother to me than a mother-in-law. "Evelyn, we need to talk. It's about Michael," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "What's wrong, dear?" Evelyn's voice was laced with concern. "It's Michael. He's having an affair," I said bluntly, the words tasting bitter. There was a pause on the other end, a heavy silence that spoke volumes. I had my suspicions, but I didn't want to believe it. Evelyn finally replied, her voice tinged with sadness. "We agreed to meet in person to discuss everything. I knew this was just the beginning of a long and difficult journey." Later that day, Michael returned home, his demeanor one of forced nonchalance. "So, have you calmed down now?" he asked, a mocking tone in his voice. I looked at him, my resolve hardening. "Calm? No, Michael. I'm far from calm. I've decided what to do next." "And what's that?" he asked, a smirk playing on his lips. "I want a divorce, Michael. I can't be part of this lie anymore," I stated, my voice unwavering. Michael's smirk disappeared, replaced by a look of disbelief. "Divorce? You think you can just decide that on your own?" "It's not just my decision. Your actions made it inevitable," I countered. He laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "You think you can survive without me? You're nothing but a housewife, Laura. You have no idea how the world works." "That may be, but I'd rather face the world alone than live another day in this sham of a marriage. And I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are," I retorted, the words fueled by years of pent-up frustration and hurt. Michael's face turned red with anger. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I would. And I will," I said, a sense of empowerment rising within me. This was the tipping point, the moment when the facade crumbled and the battle lines were drawn. I was ready to fight for my dignity, for my son's future. Michael had underestimated me for far too long. It was time for him to face the consequences of his actions. In the days following my declaration, the house became a battleground of icy silences and sharp exchanges. Michael's arrogance was palpable, but I was undeterred. Armed with the evidence of his infidelity, I started to plan my next moves. Evelyn was my rock during this time. She, too, was disillusioned with her son's actions. "I never raised him to be this way," she confessed during one of our many late-night talks. "Charles would have been devastated to see what Michael has become." I nodded, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "We'll get through this, Evelyn. We'll make sure he doesn't get away with it." My first step was to meet with the lawyer Charles had introduced me to years ago. He was an old family friend and was appalled by Michael's behavior. "We'll make sure he pays for this," he assured me, his eyes steely. We started by cutting Michael off from Charles's inheritance. The will was clear, and with Charles's recent amendments, Michael's entitlement was reduced to a pittance. This hit him hard. He had always assumed he would inherit a significant sum, and the reality of his situation was a bitter pill to swallow. The news of his affair and his subsequent disinheritance spread like wildfire. I made sure of it. His reputation, both within our social circles and at his workplace, began to crumble. The smug, confident man I had married was now a shadow of his former self, his arrogance replaced by a desperate, almost pitiable, need to salvage his image. But I didn't stop there. "You won't get a penny in alimony," I told him during one of our confrontations, "and I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are." Michael's response was a mix of anger and disbelief. "You can't do this to me. I'm your husband." "You were my husband," I corrected him coldly. "Now, you're just a man who betrayed his family." Evelyn supported me every step of the way. We became a united front against Michael, a team determined to see justice served. And as the legal proceedings began, it became clear that Michael was fighting a losing battle. His attempts to turn the tide were feeble and easily countered. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and his pleas fell on deaf ears. He was a man undone, his actions catching up to him in the most spectacular of ways. As I watched him flounder, a part of me felt vindicated. This was the karma he deserved. But there was no joy in it. only a deep sense of sorrow for what could have been and a determination to build a better future for Alex and myself. The finality of the divorce proceedings brought a sense of closure, yet the aftermath was anything but simple. Michael, stripped of his inheritance and his dignity, was a mere shadow of the man he once was. His downfall was not just legal and financial, it was a total collapse of the facade he had built around himself. Evelyn and I watched as Michael's world unraveled. He had lost his job, a consequence of the scandal and his tarnished reputation. His once lavish lifestyle was now a distant memory, replaced by mounting debts and a stark reality that he had never prepared for. One evening, as I sat with Evelyn in the living room, a sense of peace settled over me. "We did it, Evelyn. We showed him he couldn't just walk over us," I said, a small smile on my lips. Evelyn nodded, her eyes reflecting a mix of sadness and strength. "Yes, we did. Charles would have been proud of you, Laura. You stood up for yourself and Alex." Speaking of Michael, she continued, "I never imagined my own son would end up like this. But he made his choices, and now he has to live with them." Michael's attempts to cling to his old life were futile. He moved in with his mistress, but their relationship was strained, built on lies and false promises. The news of their struggles reached us through the grapevine, tales of arguments and an impending eviction due to unpaid rent. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding my life with Alex. He was my priority, my beacon of hope in the midst of the chaos that had engulfed our lives. I found a part-time job, a modest but honest way to contribute to our household and provide for my son. Evelyn was a constant source of support, her wisdom and experience guiding me through the toughest of times. Together, we created a new normal, one where the pain of the past was a memory, not a daily burden. One day I received a call from Michael's mistress. Her voice was laced with desperation. "Laura, please, can you help us? Michael, he's lost everything. We have nothing." I listened, feeling a mixture of pity and resolve. "I'm sorry for what you're going through, but Michael's choices led you both here. I have to think about my son now." Hanging up, I realized how far I had come. The Laura who had once feared confrontation was now a woman who stood her ground, who had faced adversity and emerged stronger. As I looked at Alex playing in the garden, a sense of hope filled me. We had weathered the storm, and now it was time to look forward to brighter days. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready for it, armed with the strength and resilience I had discovered within myself.